As we've been talking about, the federal government is going to pump billions more into Canada's military over the next 10 years. That boost, plus a reworking of how the government calculates defense spending, means that the defense budget will hit 1.4% of GDP in 10 years. Remember, the U.S. President, Donald Trump, and actually President Obama as well, repeatedly went after countries like Canada for ducking NATO's commitment or aspirational goal of 2% of GDP target for defense spending. So is the opposition satisfied with this plan? Is Canada spending the right amount on defense? And can the government actually deliver on these promises? Joining me now, Conservative defense critic James Bezan and the NDP's defense critic Randall Garrison. All right, start with you, James Bezan. You said earlier that you think this is putting off some of the hard decisions down the road, but if they don't have the money now, why can't they plan for the future?
Well, we know that all too often things change, especially elections, like in 2019, when the spending is actually supposed to start, is after the next election. Yep. So I am very aware of the fact that there's other priorities out there, that the defense hasn't been a priority for this government. Prime Minister Trudeau today in question period, I really thought was flat in trying to defend the defense policy review. So there isn't any new money here. This is a shell game with creative accounting, and it's a bunch of empty promises. So even though they're talking...
Well, we don't know that they're empty yet. They're promises made, and we'll see if they deliver.
Where's the resources for it? We know that, you know, if you look at their track record, $12 billion already cut from defense spending, punted down the road 20 years. They're punting the major investments here down the road as well. And really, if you're looking at, if it's not properly resourced, if there isn't a plan on how they're going to properly do procurement, if there isn't a plan on how they're going to do recruitment, then how are you going to build up the force to the levels that they're talking about? We already have the reserves been asked to increase their numbers, and they've been trying to do that for the last year. Increase their numbers because they've fallen back so far, 25% increase, but they cut training by 10%. So if you can't bring them in and train, put them through basic training and then get them ready to be soldiers, then you're not doing the job that and doing the policy any credit in taking the positions that they have.
But to be fair, and I'll go to you, Randall, I mean, they did spend some time going through what is needed, how to get there, how much money, and they did cost it out and they put some numbers. I mean, that's what a defense policy review does. It makes a plan down the road, isn't the, so it's not that it's going to happen overnight. It's not that it's happened already. This is the direction we need to go.
Well, I guess I'm a bit naive because having listened to the Minister of Foreign Affairs the day before and talk about how in this unstable world and with U.S. withdrawing from its responsibilities, Canada wants to play a leadership role in securing the world and making the world more stable. And what Canadian wouldn't agree with that? So then you get the defense review and everything is 10 or 20 years down the road. Well, the challenges we have are right now. And so I'm very disappointed. And as I know it's a surprise for some people, but New Democrats have said we are not putting enough money into the military to give our troops the training, the equipment and support they need to do the dangerous work that we ask them to do. So you need to do that. And on the other hand, the second thing you need to do is you need to increase our aid budget. Right? If we're going to get at the causes of the conflict, then we have to increase our development assistance budget. So we're arguing there should have been an immediate increase this year in the military budget and a corresponding increase in the aid budget.
Okay, but
it looked like actually yesterday it looked like well, if you look at what Minister Freeland said to what Minister Sagen said, it was kind of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the split personality going on here. That the United States isn't doing their part anymore, but then we turn around today and say, yeah, we're going to be with the only superpower in the world, and we're going to work alongside them. So nobody trusts them, nobody believes this minister. He's misled Canadians on so many occasions, and I think that's why there is so much concern on whether or not this is actually a policy.
I don't know if Canadians trust any government when it comes to procurement. I mean, that is the problem with procurement here. It does take time to plan things. So if I were to ask both of you, what's the thing that they could do right now that would make a difference, whether it be buy a piece of equipment or training or something that wasn't in that review that would would have an impact on the Canadian forces right now, James?
So instead of going the interim buy a Super Hornets, or who knows what that's going to be now that they got in this fight between Boeing and Bombardier, and of course the Liberals are backing their friends over at Bombardier. They're playing politics rather than making the investments in the military. They should go to an open and transparent competition right now and get the right jet for the Royal Canadian Air Force.
And just buy all 88?
Yeah, just do the competition. And you think about it, our current fleet of CF-18s only can go until 2025. And so under the plan they have right now, when they do the interim buy and then replace the fleet, we're going to force these old fighter jets out past 2025 into 2032 to 2035. It's not safe for our pilots. It's not the right way to go about procuring the next generation fighter jet. So they should actually go out there and do the competition now. The other thing that I'm also concerned about that was really missing is what's not there for the Navy. There isn't any new subs. They're going to try to extend the life of the Victoria-class submarines, which have had their problems over the years. The worst procurement is, by the Liberals in the previous Chrétien era, and we really do need to have submarines. We have to protect our coastlines, including in the Arctic, and the only way you do that is with submarines. And there's no mention of any new submarines that are going to try to extend the life of these. And there's nothing there for replacing the Kingston-class maritime coastal patrol vessels for our Navy. So are they going to try to do everything with these new surface combatants, which was a continuation of the National Shipbuilding Strategy we started as Conservatives? Almost everything you see in here is the extension and a repetition of what we had in the Canada First Defence Strategy. So there isn't a lot of new stuff. But I'll give them some credit, is that, we went across Canada doing our own defense policy review consultations, roundtables from coast to coast to coast, and we heard that it has to be people-centric. So I'm glad that they recognize that in theirs as well, that people come first in the Canadian Armed Forces, that we're there to support our troops, and I hope that they can deliver on the sections that they talk about, but based upon their track record.
You're skeptical.
They cut funding, they don't buy the equipment, and all they do is actually get caught up in court like they are with the search and rescue aircraft right now.
Although your government also reduced funding over time, didn't make a lot of big purchases.
We hit 1.4% GDP in 2012.
I know, but
and we did buy new ships, and we bought new aircraft, we bought new Army vehicles.
I want to get Randall in.
There's stuff bought, and then the troops will tell you they got.
Randall, what would make a difference now? Something that they could do quickly that would help?
Well, one of the problems the military has had is getting spending increases lower than the rate of inflation, so it gets harder and harder.
Salary you're talking about.
Salary and also expenses, operating expenses. So every year it gets harder and harder to do the same jobs when there's more and more demands on the military. So I was actually expecting that there would be a supplemental estimate to increase the budget this year so that the military wouldn't face those problems they've had, where we've had the Chief of Defense Staff saying, we're going to have to cut back all kinds of training, we're going to have to cut back maintenance to keep the overseas operations going. And heading into Latvia, that's not a very good sign. We're about to take on a major mission with a military defense spending increase lower than the rate of inflation. I don't think that's a good idea.
Are you also skeptical about procurement, or are you actually, I would imagine you're both hopeful that they can actually get these things?
Well, I think there's two hopeful notes in the review. One is concentrating procurement. 80% of procurement, they say, is going to move into defense. And I think getting rid of this three-headed monster we've had trying to deal with procurement is a good idea. Yeah. Maybe it's not the best solution, but it's a better solution than what we've got.
Than having multiple departments.
That's right. And the other thing I think is positive is ending the universality of service requirement. So if we want to retain people in the military, we've been in the ridiculous position of saying, if you can't do absolutely everything in the military, we kick you out. Yeah. And so the Defense Review does say, it has got one sentence saying we will look at this on a case-by-case basis. So when we've invested lots of time in training people, we shouldn't necessarily kick them out. And when people have made their careers in the military, they shouldn't be kicked out just because maybe there's one thing they can't do as a result of their service, usually.
Sure. Okay. Good perspective, gentlemen. Thank you. Randall Garrison, James Bezan.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rosie.